This reception is sponsored by Horton Ruston Poole, and I'm delighted to welcome Paul Edwards from Horton Ruston Poole Global Healthcare as our latest corporate sponsor for Executive Search. And they've kindly sponsored this, which allowed us to come to this amazing venue. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paul Edwards to the podium.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that we are absolutely delighted to be sponsors of OBN. Feel as though, in a way, we're coming back home because the legacy company of Horton Ruston Poole, which most people will remember as Ruston Poole International, we were around from 1992, and we basically grew along with the UK biotech boom. And of course, a number of the early companies we worked with would be companies based around the Oxford area. British Biotechnology, Oxford Asymmetry, Powderject were three companies we used to work with. So we're absolutely delighted to be amongst, in many ways, old friends and hopefully quite a few new friends as well. Ruston Poole International, or Horton Ruston Poole as we now are, we've for a long time had a very good connection with the European bioscience sector. We've placed CEOs, we've placed chairmen into a number of these companies. And in many ways that allowed us to be able to go out and do what is a sentiment survey, mainly amongst the investors or people receiving investment within the whole of the European biotech sector. And it's something that's actually quite close to my heart because those of you who don't know me, I was on the other side of the fence. I was the chief executive of Gene Medics from 1999 to 2005. Delighted I've got two former colleagues here today. And we went through all those same issues. You know, in 1999, we raised private money. In 2000, we IPO'd the company on the London and Singapore Stock Exchange. And then we hit the tough times in 2002, 2003, where the capital markets were absolutely terrible, when we needed to go back to the market to get money. We ended up having to scrabble around to keep the company's programs going forward. And eventually the company was sold to Reliance Corporation of India in 2005. So, you know, that's why we wanted to repeat the survey. And I say repeat the survey because at Ruston Poole, we did surveys in 2008 and 2010. And the 2010 was obviously an interesting time because that was just after the global economic crash. And I was just looking up some very, very interesting numbers and how far the market did crash. And according to the Ernst & Young 2012 Global Life Science Report, back in 2007, European companies, European life science companies, raised something like $7.7 billion US dollars in various ways. Just 12 months later, that figure was 2.6 billion. That is a massive fall off. You know, no wonder companies struggled. And really since then, we've seen that level of total investment being around about the 3 billion a year, nowhere near the peaks of 2006, 2007. So that was the backdrop when we first started talking about doing this survey. 2013, suddenly things have just suddenly started to change. We've seen some major capital raisings, private capital raisings, within the EU biotechs, and obviously companies close to us here, Oxford Nanopore Technology, Immunocore and Summit, so that's just been announced in the last couple of days, have raised some serious money. And then if we look over at the Atlantic, what we're seeing for the first time for a long, long time, probably since 2007, 2008, are IPOs happening. And in the first 6 months of this year, there's been 14 startup companies have gone out on IPOs and raised something like 800 million US dollars. You know, so we then, when we went out and did our survey in the last few weeks, that was a little bit more of the backdrop. So our view was that it was likely to be an optimistic survey, and so actually, as I explained a little bit more, so it proved. Before I go any further, I'd just like to say a big thank you to my colleague Matt Wheeler, wherever he is. Matt did a lot of the groundwork for getting this survey together because obviously we contacted something like 150 people who were chairmen, CEOs, VCs, private equity people in I think about something like 10 different countries to get a cross-section of views. So Has the survey come out as optimistic? Well, the answer is yes, a cautious yes. You know, there's no doubt it's a far more optimistic result than what we saw in 2010. And if we look at the main findings, what people are expecting is that more money, it's going to be easier to raise money in the next 12 months than it was in the last 12 months. We would expect to see more investment in bioscience companies over the next 12 months. There is also some optimism that some companies may, within the next 12 months, be able to go out and raise money via an IPO. That's the first time we've heard any sort of optimism for, 5, 6 years. So it isn't all good news. I mean, if you talk to the fund managers, they will still say it's going to be very, very hard to raise new bioscience funds over the next 12 months. But as one fund manager said to me, you know, if IPOs really do happen and there are some good biotech pharma deals, well, maybe in 12 months' time, these funds will start to happen again. And of course, you know, most companies, if they're looking for an exit, are still looking for the biotech pharma funds. That's probably the most likely exit route, the deal between the big pharma company. That obviously is, you know, the pessimistic side of that is, of course, there's an awful lot more programs that require money than there are deals to be done. So there's still a little bit of pessimism around that. But, you know, what our last question was, we finally went out to people and said, well, if on a 1 to 10 scale, what's your level of optimism for the next 12 months? And when we went out in 2010, that was 5.5, and on a 1 to 10 scale, that's about midway. This year, the average level was 6.8. So we are seeing amongst, right across the board, amongst the CEOs, amongst the chairmen, amongst the VCs, amongst the private equity people, that there is the highest degree of confidence that we've seen probably since 2007. So on the back table there, and when the speeches are finished, we've brought a load of something like about 100 copies of our survey. And you'll see on it, it says, the green shoots of recovery with a question mark. Now, whether that's a question mark, whether you want to take the question mark off is up to yourselves. But all I'd like to say is when OBN find an equally wonderful venue in 12 months' time, I just hope that optimism has come to fruition and we'll have all had a very successful year. So thank you very much, and please, at the end of the speech, do grab a copy of our report. Thank you.